The wind scratched at my face the moment I stepped out on First Street North. Minneapolis does a particular kind of quiet in deep winter, the kind that makes even traffic lights seem reluctant to change. I locked my car, then pressed a cream envelope to my ribs like a hot water bottle that didn't warm. Inside was the signed agreement from BIRCH and HEARTH, the North Loop restaurant with stone walls and low golden lamps. I had booked the private room weeks ago, sent the deposit, confirmed the head count. I told myself that the cost would buy something simple and priceless, the sense of us in one room laughing without effort. A wash of rosemary and warm yeast met me as the door swung in. The host desk was laid with a ledger and a shallow bowl of matches stamped with the restaurant's initials. Reservation name, the hostess asked, friendly and brisk. Keen, I said. Private room. She scanned her screen. Party of 16. Yes. She brightened as if placing a face to a memory, then her mouth folded a little. Oh, your group came last night. There was a cake and little place cards. Copper ink. It looked lovely. For a moment, I didn't understand the sentence. My body did, though. It tightened as if bracing for black ice. There must be a mistake. The dinner is tonight, 7:30. She kept her voice soft. I'm so sorry. The private room was closed out for a Keen reservation yesterday. I remember because of the allergy notes. The allergy notes were mine. I'd posted them with ridiculous care dairy-free risotto for RHEA, sparkling apple cider for Owen, gluten-free rolls for Caleb's mother, a pasta with no pepper flakes, because Owen says pepper sparkles like fire. I had thought of everything, all the small kindnesses that pass for love when words fail. I see, I said, though I didn't. Thank you. Back outside, the cold pinched at my jaw. Through the window, the dining room glowed with other people's occasions, birthdays and promotions, the outer shell of happiness. I sat in the car without turning on the engine. The envelope on the passenger seat looked too heavy for paper. On my phone, our family group thread Keen Circle blinked awake. 3 days earlier, I typed Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Private room confirmed. A string of thumbs-ups trailed under it. RHEA had tapped a heart. My sister had sent a gif of confetti. There was no correction, no counterplan, nothing. I called RHEA. She answered on the second ring, the room around her bright and echoey. Hey, Mom, where is everyone? I asked. No accusation, just the cold question that sat in my mouth like metal. A beat, then a light, practiced laugh. It was the laugh she used when she wanted to end a conversation without saying so. We moved it to Friday. It worked better. The roads were getting bad, and we figured you don't love night driving. I booked it, I said, but she had already started talking to someone in the background. When she came back, her voice was sugar glass brittle and see-through. Don't stress. We'll bring you leftovers. The call ended. In this window, I watched my own face, pale and calm as if printed on paper. For a short while, I did nothing. Doing nothing felt like a decision that cost nothing. But the quiet pressed against my teeth, and memory, that restless archivist, began to lift drawers. The first time RHEA asked for help after she moved out, it was late and urgent. Just 1 month's rent, she said. I swear I have it sorted after this. I transferred the money in my nightgown and felt important for it, as if I had reached out a hand to keep her from a ledge no one else could see. Once became twice. Twice softened into a season. A season slid into 16 months. Somewhere in there, Caleb went through a stretch without work, and I paid their car note so they wouldn't lose it. Then came the preschool deposit for Owen, who adored blocks and hated naps. After that, fees for a certificate program RHEA started, and abandoned phone bills she promised to reimburse when taxes with came groceries just for this weekend, Mom. There is a tone people use when they want responsibility to sound like virtue. That's what mothers do, RHEA would say, affectionate and faintly scolding like I had tried to dodge a duty, and she was gently steering me back. Gratitude, when it arrived, was brief and perfunctory, like a postcard bought in an airport. One December, I bought too much an air purifier because their apartment's vents whistled a jacket Caleb had admired and said was ridiculous in a good way. A wooden train for Owen that made him hop in place. My checking account sank to a line that made me breathe shallow. When it was my turn, I unwrapped a candle that smelled like snow and a thin photo magnet of the three of them in front of a tree. I wasn't in it. No one mentioned that. I told myself that love is noticing the unglamorous, non-negotiable, noticing that fills the gaps before anyone else feels them. In time, the noticing became a habit. The habit acquired a folder. At first, the folder was practical receipts. I didn't want to lose emails printed because I hate scrolling for important things. Then the bank started sending me 2-factor codes for transactions I didn't make. I assumed an algorithm had hiccuped. A week later, a box arrived at my building with my name misspelled and their zip. I drove it to RHEA's place in St. Anthony, told myself it was an honest mix-up, watched her take the package too quickly, like a person catching a falling cup. I drove home by the river where ice along the banks looked like torn paper. In my kitchen, the heat clicked awake in the vents. I set the envelope with the restaurant paperwork on the table. then opened my laptop and let a blank spreadsheet face me, the way a mirror faces you in a hotel impersonally without history. I typed the restaurant total, first $2, $186.77, because it was already on the screen in the email below. Then I let my fingers follow whatever memory sent them. Rent transfers, $650, $870, $1,050. The months sit oddly in a list more like weather than money. The car insurance payments when Caleb was between jobs. Preschool fees labeled bridge months. A phone bill marked, "I'll Venmo you." That Friday never reached. A property tax payment I made after Caleb called from a parking lot and said the notice had come late and there were penalties and he was trying, really trying. Line by line, the screen filled with the accounting of a story I hadn't wanted to read. I thought adding columns would make me angry in a clean, useful way. Instead, I felt something dull and exact take a seat in my chest. When the sum tipped over 40,000, I stopped. I didn't need to know the precise number like a score to pursue. What I needed was weight, and the weight was there in black cells that didn't argue back. I printed the pages, fed the paper into the machine with careful hands, then clipped them at the corner with a black binder clip I had been saving for nothing in particular. The restaurant invoice went into a smaller envelope, plain and white. The spreadsheet stack I slid into a folder that used to hold warranty cards. The apartment's old radiators let out a patient hiss. Outside, someone walked a dog in boots that squeaked in the snow. It was not late, but the particular quiet of winter makes every hour feel as if it has shut its door. I stood for a while with my palm resting on the folder like you steady a suitcase to feel if you've packed what you meant to. I did not rehearse sentences. I did not draft speeches. I wrote the date in the corner of the top page, then set the folder and the envelope beside each other on the table, two small rectangles of order in a room that had asked so little of me and given back exactly what I put in. Heat light, a place to sit and breathe. I washed my face, set the car keys near the door, and turned off the kitchen lamp. In the dark, the street light cut the room into shapes. Paper waited the way paper always waits, quiet, factual, impossible to charm. By morning, the papers looked smaller on my kitchen table, as if the night had bled some of their thread away. I slid the spreadsheet into a slate blue folder, the restaurant invoice into a plain envelope, and set both beside my keys. There was nothing ceremonial about it. I put on my boots, locked the apartment, and let the stairwell's dry heat follow me down to the street. The drive up Central and across to St. Anthony was a corridor of salt-stained lanes and low clouds. Houses shook off last night's powder in soft puffs when wind slipped through. RHEA's split level sat halfway down a block of tidy yards and porch lights that stayed on past sunrise. I parked under a bare maple and watched my breath fog the windshield until it felt ordinary to move. Caleb opened on the second knock. He had flour on one sleeve and the sleepy look of a man who hadn't expected the day to require definitions. "Marin," he said, shifting to let me in. The entryway had a rubber mat lined with 3 pairs of boots, 2 adult, 1 child each, with a neat little drift of melted snow pooled beneath. The house smelled like cinnamon toast and sour coffee. RHEA was on the couch with her feet tucked under a knit throw. Owen lay on the rug, elbows braced, humming over his tablet, volume low. The television was paused on a morning cartoon. My folder felt heavier than it had in the car, not because of paper, but because rooms like this ask people to be soft, and I had not come soft. "Mom," RHEA said, as if she had been expecting a delivery, not a person. "We're just finishing breakfast." "I won't take long," I said, and set the envelope on the coffee table the way you set down car keys after a trip. "This is the bill from BIRCH and HEARTH." Caleb glanced at RHEA, then at me. "We can, talk about that later." "It's for the dinner I booked," I said. "The one I wasn't invited to." Owen giggled at something on his screen. Cartoon laughter leaked into the quiet like helium. RHEA let out a small breath that tried to be a laugh and turned into a shrug. "It made more sense to go Friday. Roads, babysitter, everything. You hate driving at night in the cold, Mom." "We were being practical." "You were being exclusive," I said without heat. "There's a difference." Her mouth shaped a smile that had no temperature at all. "You're taking this personally. That's the only way a person can take being left out," I said. Then I slid the folder onto the table beside the envelope and clicked open the clasp. If a life can have handwriting, mine was in the neat labels at the top right of each page, dates, amounts, notes in dark ink. I fanned the stack with my thumb and laid out the first 3 sheets. Bank transfers with captions I'd written for myself when I printed them. Rent January. Ren, February, bridge month. Preschool car, insurance gap. In the margins I had scribbled in pencil, RHEA said she'll pay when taxes hit. Caleb's interview Tuesday, remind myself to breathe. RHEA sipped from a mug she didn't seem to taste. "You kept all that?" "I started keeping things when I noticed I was forgetting what year one favor turned into the next," I said. "It's not an indictment, it's a record." Caleb leaned forward, elbows on knees, tension climbing his shoulders. We said thank you. Sometimes I said, sometimes you said, that's what moms do. He looked away, embarrassed, then tried another door. We were getting on our feet, and then the car broke down, and then daycare. I know the story, I said. I helped write it. I placed the fourth sheet on the table, a summary from my credit card company, with a red banner I'd highlighted. New card issued, address verification complete. Under it, a mailing address that matched the numbers on the house I had just walked into with my name spelled correctly, my middle initial wrong. Next to that, a cluster of online purchases. I hadn't made beauty packages, a small electronics order, a subscription that renews on the first of every month. Caleb's face went the color of printer paper. What is that? RHEA didn't look. Probably a clerical mix-up. Banks mess up all the time. If you called them, it'll get reversed. I called, I said. They verified the shipping address before I did. They told me the last 4 digits that confirmed the card in question isn't mine. I tapped the page lightly. The pattern of charges matches weeks that show up in our text threads. Spot a phone upgrade the week you posted the new headphones, RHEA. Her eyes flicked to the stack and then away, like looking at a bright thing that hurt. She kept her voice casual enough to bruise. You're making this into a whole production. It's already a production, I said. I'm just placing the program in front of its cast. The 3 of us sat in the burr of the forced air vent. Owen's cartoon paused itself and the room blinked into stillness. I slid the envelope an inch closer to RHEA. She didn't reach for it. I didn't push. From today, I said, because the word from gave me a bridge. I could believe if you asked me for money, we write it down. If I say yes, we both sign. If I say no, it's no. No card applications in my name. No deliveries in my name to this address. If mail comes here for me, you text me and set it aside. RHEA laughed too loud for the quiet. Contracts for family. You're going to make me sign a receipt if you buy Owen a winter coat. I'm not talking about gifts, I said. I'm talking about budgets and debts. I'm talking about knowing where my name is and where it isn't. Caleb rubbed the back of his neck, eyes on the table. We don't want drama. We'll sort it. We don't need... He gestured at the papers as if they had shown up on their own. This is the sorting, I said. RHEA put her mug down harder than a mug needs to be put down. You just want control. You always have. No, I said, and surprised myself by how peacefully the word arrived. I want proportion. I want to stop pretending that being generous is the same thing as being available for every emergency you create or inherit. Her shrug sharpened. So you're done with us, over money. Don't flatten me to make it easier to ignore me, I said. I'm not done with you. I'm done with this. I tapped the stack. She looked at Caleb like an actor checking for a cue and found none. His eyes stayed on the corner of the binder clip, the tiny silver triangle that made the whole thing hold together. I reached for my wallet and took out a card the size of a business card, pale blue seal stamped on the left. I set it between us. Detective Noelle Hart, I said. Financial Crimes, Hennepin County. She has my statement and copies of what you're looking at. If another account appears with my name attached, or if a charge posts that I didn't authorize, she'll handle it. I won't. Caleb's mouth opened and closed on nothing. The card sat on the table like a small door someone had drawn on the floor. RHEA stared at it as if it were a trick photograph. For the first time, her voice lost the easy brightness she wore like jewelry. You went to the police. I went to the office where people bring papers when money has been moved in ways it shouldn't have been, I said. They were not surprised by the shape of my folder. That bothered me more than anything. RHEA's hands went to the throw over her knees and smoothed it flat, then balled it, then smoothed it again. You're threatening us. Your own family. It's not a threat, I said. It's a boundary you can see. Owen looked up then because the word see belongs to children. He blinked at me, then at the table, then back at his screen when the cartoon's theme started softly from where it had paused. He was the only person in the room whose needs were not an argument. We'll pay back the dinner. Caleb said, voice level, as if he had found a single clean thing to say and wanted to offer it quickly before the room refused it. We can set up a plan. $50 a week until it's done. You'll pay the dinner, I said. You'll handle your regular bills. I'm not scheduling a contrition calendar with you. Then what do you want? RHEA asked. Not exasperated. Curious almost. As if she had finally realized there were other answers besides the one she had assumed I would give. I want you to stop spending my money without asking, I said. I want you to stop deciding certain evenings are more enjoyable without me and then sending me pictures of the cake. That was a coincidence, RHEA said, and the lie sounded tired. You wrote on the group thread that the Copper Place cards were perfect, I said. Did you write that Friday night or pretend to write it Saturday morning while I was parking? Her mouth flattened. You're reading into things. I'm reading the things I said and turned a page so she could read them too. Silence settled in with a weight that rearranged the room. It wasn't a dramatic silence. There was nothing cinematic in it. It was the domestic kind where people pretend to be thinking instead of choosing. I gathered the papers and squared them with a single tap against the table's edge. I left a copy of the dinner bill and a one-page summary with totals. Nothing else. The rest went back into the folder, the clasp clicked shut, small and precise. "You can keep those," I said. "They're for your records." RHEA gave a sound that wanted to be a laugh and was not. "You're unbelievable." "I'm legible," I said. "There's a difference." Caleb stood because standing gave him something to do with his hands. He looked toward the kitchen and then back as if coffee might be a strategy. "Do you want something to drink?" "We have tea or juice." "No, thank you," I said. He nodded like a person who had been relieved of a terrible task. Owen's cartoon reached a soft, triumphant chord and then returned to its normal noises. Somewhere down the block, a plow scraped a corner. It all sounded very ordinary, which made it easier to understand how we had gotten here. Somehow, the smallest choices had made a staircase. RHEA's voice changed again, losing its glassy plank and finding something rawer, though not yet honest. "You'll be the villain in every story I have to tell Owen about why Grandma isn't around. You get to tell him whatever story you want," I said. "What I'll tell him is his grandmother loves him and answers the phone when he calls." For a moment, her face moved through expressions the way winter light moves across a wall, quickly, then not at all. She pushed the envelope an inch away from her as if the paper were the hot thing in the room. "So that's it? You drop a detective's card and a spreadsheet and call it a day." "I came to say what I mean while I can still say it quietly," I said. "That's all." Caleb's gaze drifted to the card again. Words gathered and left his mouth without stamping their feet. He didn't find one to keep. RHEA wrapped the knit throw tighter around her ankles and looked past me at the window where the bare maple outside marked the glass, with its patient gray lines. "I'll see myself out," I said and rose. No one stopped me. No one followed. In the entryway, I zipped my coat, slid my hands into my gloves, and listened to the small sounds that make a house sound. Like a house, the heat moving the fridge, nudging itself awake, a child humming under his breath. I opened the door and stepped into the air that bit my throat in a way I recognized. On the walk to the car, the envelope and one-page summary felt as if they were still on the coffee table, bearing their own weight in a room that would not be able to pretend it had none. I sat, closed the door, and watched my breath fade on the glass. The folder on the passenger seat waited with the patience only paper manages. I put the car in gear and eased away from the curb tires, whispering over the salted street, the maple's shadow slipping across the windshield like a note passed quietly from 1 hour to the next. The folder rode beside me like a quiet passenger all the way back across the river. In the apartment, I set it on the desk, slid my gloves on the radiator, and stood for a moment with the window cracked to let the cold rinse the room. The air had that sharp mineral smell that cleanly separates 1 hour from another. I made tea not because I wanted it, but because the kettle's click was a sound that asked nothing. I didn't expect anything to happen that day. Expectation had done its share of damage, so I let the hours behave like ordinary hours. I answered 2 work emails. I swept a small drift of road salt from the entry rug. I stacked the copy paper straight in the printer drawer and felt the mild pleasure of squared edges. When my phone buzzed, I ignored it for a minute, letting it jostle along the table before I reached for it. The text was from an unfamiliar number ending in 44. "This is Detective Hart. Are you available to speak today?" I called. She picked up on the second ring voice, even unhurried. "Ms. Keene Noel Hart. I've reviewed the materials you submitted. Thank you for how organized they are. It makes a difference." "Thank you for calling," I said, and felt a strange guilt as if politeness could be mistaken for an apology. "I'll be sending a brief follow-up with a list of items we can request from the bank, if you authorize it," she said. "In the meantime, we make what we call a knock and note. It's a preliminary visit to the address associated with the disputed charges. Not an arrest, not an accusation, a documentation step. It often prevents further activity." "I understand. We'll let you know when it's complete," she said. "And Ms. Keene, if a new charge posts don't call the merchant first, call me." Her tone wasn't severe. It was practical, the way you tell someone not to put a wooden spoon in the disposal. We hung up. I poured the tea down the sink and rinsed the mug, not because it was dirty, but because rinsing creates the illusion that some small thing has been washed away. By mid-afternoon, the light had gone to the color of a nickel. I put on my coat and walked 2 blocks to the pharmacy for dish soap and a roll of tape. The sidewalk was both slick and gritty, the snow that uncertain age between new and old. On the way home, my phone hummed again. This time the number was unfamiliar and local. "Marin," a man asked, when I answered, clearing his throat as if he'd picked up the call in a mouthful of winter air at the same time. "It's Jonah Pike, RHEA's cousin. I remembered him as the quiet one at holidays, hovering at the edges of photographs, polite to fault. "Hi, Jonah. I'm sorry to call out of the blue," he said. "Could I stop by 10 minutes? I'm close." "Of course," I said before I decided whether I meant it. He arrived while I was still peeling off my gloves, tall shoulders hunched against the cold, a cardboard box wedged under one arm and a paper bakery bag in the other. "I didn't know what to bring," he said in the hallway, embarrassed, offering the bag like a peace flag. "These are berry turnovers from that place on Lowry. They look too cheerful to ignore." "Thank you," I said, and set them on the counter. He stayed near the doorway as if the apartment were a museum, and he needed permission to move. "I won't take long," he said. "I was at RHEA's earlier dropping off a charger Owen left at my place, and she said you came by." He took a breath and let it out carefully. "I need to say something that's been thorny in my throat for 3 days." He said it without preamble, like a person stepping into cold water, because counting to 3 only delays the shock. "They changed the dinner to Friday to keep you out. RHEA said it simplified things." I laughed. I wish I hadn't. I didn't say, "That's mean," or "Don't do that." I just stood there and smiled because I don't like scenes. He rubbed a hand over his face. It was weak. The box at his feet had the look of an object someone meant to deliver as an excuse to deliver words. "Is that for me?" I asked to give him somewhere to set his hands. He nudged it forward with the toe of his boot. "Half my share for the dinner," he said. "I figured 16 people split a bill, give or take. I can do more later if you need it. I'm not trying to clean the slate, He shook his head, locating the sentence he could stand behind. "I don't want my piece of it on you." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Apologies float to the surface in families like breadcrumbs. This wasn't that. This was someone naming the thing, paying the price he could pay, and refusing the rest without drama. "Thank you," I said, because the words fit. He shifted his weight, relieved to have finished the business he set for himself. "I can go. I just needed to hand you that and say the part that was mine." "You can sit," I said. "It's warm in here. The chairs don't bite." He smiled, brief and genuine, and sat. We talked about nothing for a few minutes, the snow that threatened and never arrived, a mutual acquaintance who'd opened a plant shop, the wooden train on his coffee table that had been his when he was Owen's age. When he stood to go, he touched the box with his knuckles as if to be sure it was still real. "If you don't want checks, text me a number and I'll send it there," he said. "Whatever works for you." "Checks are fine," I said. "Paper and I are on good terms." After he left, the apartment felt different in a way that didn't show. The turnovers sat under their thin paper like a promise that wasn't trying too hard. I put the box on the desk next to the folder without opening it. It wasn't that I didn't trust him. It was that counting doesn't always help. Evening arrived early in the winter's habit of arriving early. I was reading on the couch, the kind of reading where you move your eyes but hold your place by stubbornness, when my phone rang. The number was the precinct's switchboard. Ms. Keene, Detective Hart said, "Just letting you know we made the visit." 2 of our officers spoke with Ms. Keene and Mr. Fletcher at the St. Anthony address about the disputed card. They collected basic statements and explained the documentation we'd be requesting. No incident. "We'll follow up with the bank tomorrow." I heard the words plainly, and then again, under a layer of echo, the way you hear the same song from 2 rooms at once. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "No need to thank me," she said. "That's the job. If they contact you about it, keep it simple. Refer them to me." "Okay. And if anything arrives in the mail that you didn't request, don't destroy it. Bag it. We'll pick it up." She didn't fill the call with warnings or comfort. She didn't need to. We ended there. I put the phone face down on the table and sat back. The room made its small nighttime noises, the refrigerator's soft, muscular hum, the baseboard heat's metal tick. I waited for the familiar swell of guilt, the instant replay of a decision from the point of view of everyone it inconvenienced. It didn't come. The quiet felt like the right size. Later, a message appeared from Caleb. "We talked to 2 officers. We'll handle the bill. Please don't involve Owen in this." The words were not kind and not unkind. They were an attempt at tidy. I replied, "Not involving him." "Dinner bill copy is on your table. Good night." He didn't respond. Sleep was unremarkable. No long dreams, no inventory of shame. Morning laid its thin coin of light along the windowsill. I showered, dressed, and took the elevated bus to the library because I needed a book about paste recipes for a cabinet I intended to paper, and because library quiet is a breed of quiet that makes other quiets stronger. When I came home, 2 envelopes waited at my door, one from my bank with a form authorizing disclosures, one unmarked with my name typed on a thin label. Inside the unmarked envelope was a note in RHEA's looping confident script: "Can you come by tonight as a family? We should talk." Below it, in a different hand, more careful, Pepper's 7:30 works. C. No apology attached, no threat, no plea. I put the note on the counter and made a mark on the wall calendar without writing what the mark meant. I don't know how long I stood there, hand still on the pen, before the second knock of the day came. When I opened the door, the hallway held 2 uniformed officers, and the particular cool of air that followed them in from the stairwell. "Ms. Keene," the taller one asked. "We're here to pick up any physical documents you want logged related to the case Detective Hart is handling." I handed over the bag I'd prepared printouts of the card. Noticed screenshots from my account platform with the last 4 digits obscured the envelope with the shipping label that had matched the St. Anthony address. The taller officer read my name on the chain of custody form back to me slowly to make sure it was correct. The other officer clipped the bag shut with the steady pride of a person who likes procedures because procedures are fair when people aren't. When they left, I shut the door with the soft care of someone returning a sleeping child to bed. It struck me then how few things in my life required me to raise my voice. The thought wasn't triumphant, it was oddly restful. In the afternoon, because afternoons must be used for something, I took the turnovers to my neighbor across the hall. A woman in her 70s who nursed a persistent basil plant under a grow light and evaluated pastries like a judge at a county fair. She took one bite, frowned at the ceiling in appreciation, and said, "The trick is the sugar on top. If it cuts your lip a little, it's right." On the way back to my door, I heard a baby cry 2 floors down and the rhythm of footsteps above. The ordinary sounds felt like scaffolding I had not noticed before, as if quiet can be framed, not just felt. When my phone rang again in early evening, I knew the voice before I saw the screen. "Mom," RHEA said. Not the bright version, the flat, careful version that belongs to a person moving through a minefield she laid herself. "Come over at 7:30. We want to make this make sense." The phrasing was unhelpful and entirely familiar. "I can be there," I said. I looked at the calendar and saw my mark looking back like a small, polite eye. "I'll knock." She didn't say thank you. We both hung up before we could make the call worse. I put on my coat, rechecked my wallet for the ridiculous comfort of finding everything where I'd left it, and lifted the slate blue folder from the desk. I did not need all of it. I took a slim new stack, a 1-page summary, a short list in plain language of what I would and would not allow my name to be attached to. A note, handwritten and legible, addressed to Owen for a later time, that included nothing about money. Outside, the evening arranged itself without ceremony, clouds, low streetlights waiting until they were sure they were needed. I locked the door behind me and walked down the hallway that smelled faintly of old wood and laundry soap. The folder balanced against my hip, light enough to carry, heavy enough to change the shape of my pocket, as I slipped the keys inside. The stairwell was colder than the hall, and the breath that left my mouth held its shape even after I had stepped into the next step. The stairwell gave my breath back to me in small white puffs. Outside, the evening had settled into the kind of cold that organizes people, quick steps, short sentences, doors opened and closed without ceremony. I drove the familiar grid to St. Anthony, turned onto their block, and parked under the maple whose branches etched the sky thin as pencil lines. Porch lights glowed as if they belonged more to the street than to the houses. Caleb opened before I had finished knocking. "He's asleep," he said, already answering the question I hadn't asked. "Upstairs." The living room looked as it had the day before, but everything in it seemed to have been moved a 1/4 inch closer together. RHEA stood when I came in and sat again without committing to either. A blanket lay across her knees like a costume she hadn't decided to wear. The television was off. The room made the ordinary house sounds, heat rising through vents, a clock somewhere insisting on each minute. I set the slim stack on the coffee table and took the armchair across from them. "Thank you for making the time," I said. The politeness wasn't armor, it was a way of keeping the air level. RHEA tucked hair behind one ear. "We want to be practical," she said, the word she uses when she means cheap or fast or easy. "The bill from the restaurant will deal with it. But the other thing can't become a saga." I slid the top page toward her with one finger. "This isn't a saga. It's a boundary. 3 points: no accounts in my name without my written consent. No deliveries in my name to this address. Requests for money in writing agreed or refused without renegotiation by text at midnight." The sentences read like instructions on a small appliance, short, unadorned, resistant to argument. Caleb leaned forward. "We can sign that," he said, eager to be useful to something that did not require apologizing. "I mean, we can sign it tonight." "I didn't bring a pen to trap you," I said. "You can read it, keep it, think." RHEA ran her eyes down the page and back up again, as if looking for a word that would let her flip the meaning. "You could have told us all this without the detective," she said. "I did tell you," I said. "For a long time. I told you with my face at the door of a restaurant and with the way I had to teach my bank what my name looks like when it belongs to me. The detective is there, so I'm not the only person listening." RHEA's mouth tilted into the familiar half-smile, then let it go. "This makes me look like a criminal," she said. "It makes you look like a person who can read," I said, and surprised myself with the steadiness of it. Caleb exhaled through his nose, not a laugh. Something like surrender. "We'll pay the dinner," he said. "More than 50 a week. We'll cut some things." "Pay it," I said. "Or don't. That's yours to manage." The room's quiet changed shape, not larger or smaller, just clearer, like a pane wiped with a sleeve. Upstairs, a toilet tank refilled, then stopped. In the hallway, a baseboard clicked. RHEA folded the paper and unfolded it, leaving a shallow crease like a hesitated decision. "Do you want the box back?" she asked suddenly. "What box?" "The one with the charger Jonah brought," she said, and color lifted in her cheeks for the first time. "He came by after you left yesterday, told us he'd given you money, said we moved the dinner to keep you out. The admission cost her. She paid it like someone sliding a bill across a counter without looking at the total." The doorbell rang before I answered. Caleb rose with relief. He returned with Jonah's shoulders dusted with snow, hands bare as if he had forgotten he owned gloves. "I was down the street," Jonah said to the room, then to me. "I wanted to make sure you got the transfer. It should clear tomorrow." He saw the paper on the table and, without being invited, sat on the arm of the sofa rather than the cushion, ready to leave quickly if leaving proved kinder. "We're in the middle of something," RHEA said. I could see that he said and didn't move. His presence did nothing dramatic. It did exactly enough to keep the air honest. I picked up the second page in my stack, the one not for signatures. "This is a summary," I said, and placed it beside the first. "Totals only. You don't need to agree with any number on it. You need to understand that I know them." RHEA stared at the columns as if they were in a language she once spoke and had let rust. "You're going to tell people," she said. A small voice dressed like a larger one. "I don't trade stories," I said. "I keep receipts." Her eyes shone without softening. "You're choosing paper over us." "I'm choosing to stop being erased by being convenient," I said. "That's all." Caleb lifted his hands as if to touch both of us and chose the air between. "I want Owen to have his grandmother," he said. "I want that more than I want to be right about any of this." "I'm not going anywhere he needs me to be," I said. "You can text me his schedule. I'll show up to the part that's mine." Jonah cleared his throat. "I'll head out," he said. "To me, thank you for answering your door." To RHEA quietly, "You can apologize later in whatever way actually counts." He left the way good witnesses leave without making himself a character in what he had seen. The door shut softly. The house reset its sounds. RHEA pressed her palms to her eyes and then dropped them, leaving two pale ovals like where snow had been brushed away. "I don't know how to talk to you if you're not the person who rescues us," she said. It was honest and not an apology. "You'll use smaller words," I said. "You'll make fewer assumptions." I stood not to leave yet, but to let my body remember I could. "I'm going to put the papers on the table and walk out. You can text me when you've read them. Don't text to negotiate, text to acknowledge." She nodded like someone agreeing to drink water, not because thirst had taught her anything, just because thirst exists. Caleb followed me to the entryway and didn't say goodbye, which felt correct. Outside, the cold had sharpened a degree, and the sky had cleared into stars. My breath rose and broke. The maple threw its lace on the sidewalk. In the car, I sat for a minute with my hands on the wheel and my forehead against the leather, a posture that could be mistaken for prayer. Then I drove. Days found their shape without announcing themselves. A form from the bank, a short email from Detective HART, documents received. A white envelope in my mailbox with my name typed correctly and a check that matched Jonah's text to the penny. 2 messages from Caleb in the flat, helpful tone of a man reading a bus schedule, piano at 10, dentist at 3, ending with thanks and nothing else. I answered with got it and nothing else. One afternoon, I carried a bag of books back to the library through a light snow that thought better of itself halfway down and turned to dust. On the way home, I walked by BIRCH and HEARTH because it sat between the library and the bus, and because avoiding a block is a kind of permission I didn't need to grant. The room glowed in its usual honey. A couple at the first table shared a plate and leaned toward each other in the absorbed way people do when they think the room belongs to them. I paused long enough to catch the rosemary in the air and to know it for what it was, a good smell I could leave behind. In the evening, my apartment's windows went dark against the dark and bright against the bright. I cooked an egg, then another. The base of a car passing on Hennepin pressed and let go like a hand on a shoulder, nothing more. I sat at the desk and wrote keen on the inside cover of a book I meant to keep and slid the detective's card into a drawer where it fit neatly between a tape measure and a fountain pen. Papers rested where I left them. They did not demand to be read. The quiet came and stayed like a guest who knows the house and reaches for the right light switch without looking. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.